Welcome to Points of Change. And today I have a great pleasure of speaking with somebody who I know pretty well and known her for a long time. And she has an incredible story. And we are going to speak something about that and how she's become a very successful property investor in the UK and is now helping other people to sort out their financial lives and even be ready to prepare themselves for not just retiring, but a comfortable, even wealthy retirement. Her name is Vicki Wusche. We're going to meet her right after the titles. I love that. It's my new titles, Vicki. What do you think?
Yeah, I know. A very good-looking man there, and I mean, not just you, but the other one pointing at you.
Not just me. Yeah, absolutely.
Not just you.
Wonder what made me pick him. But Vicki, it's really good to be speaking with you today. And we've spoken before. Last time I brought you onto one of my podcast shows, we didn't really get to talk about what we had planned because of COVID and everything. I mean, we had a great chat. We talked about really dealing with all of this and taking care of our mental health and having optimism and hope for what was in the future afterwards. Today, we get to talk a bit more about what you're doing now and a bit more about your journey, some of which I've been able to see. And, I think things in your life were probably very different when we first met to how they are now, right?
Yeah, very different. I mean, crikey, that was 2007, 6, 7, I think.
Somewhere around there for sure. Yeah, I think definitely 2006, 2007.
We've known one another an entire teenager's life.
I hadn't thought about it from that perspective. Maybe not having kids, but yeah, you're absolutely right. It's certainly been a while. Somewhere, I really need to find this. Somewhere I've got a really cool photograph of you and I at one of the events. And I had a Superman vest on under my shirt, and I was pulling it open. It was a really nice photo. I'm gonna find it somewhere.
Oh,
Maybe I'll try and include it in something in the show notes later.
I've got a lot of pictures of us putting funny faces. We did a lot of this for some reason.
Oh, so pouty faces.
We did a lot of the pictures of that time were pouty faces for some reason.
Maybe that was just around the time before duck face was becoming a bit of a thing as well. But we had a lot of fun at those events and we got to know each other. But tell us a bit more about where you were around that sort of time, what your life looked like.
Oh, gosh, now you've got me going back there. So I would say that I had recently been made redundant. I had, and from a job I adored. So I think that's the key thing. There was a whole issue of control in my life. Here I am bombing down the motorway, having a great time, fifth gear, everything going well, director of education projects, creating my own modules at universities, all that sort of stuff. And then bam, someone pulls the plug. I don't know, like you don't want to pull your rug out from underneath you when you're on a motorway. So I've mixed my metaphors here.
Sure.
But it felt like that. I've had this sort of this crash and it's all over. And then having to sort of pick yourself back up and reinvent. And one of the things I thought I'd do, well, I've been working with all these businesses for years, helping them look at where the education and the knowledge is in their business and where they can be successful. I can do that for myself. But I didn't realize that people valued me because I was free. And that's a conversation that you'll find a lot on any sort of channel. How do we give things for free and yet still show that we are of value? And so all of these, and at that time it would have been a lot, like 1,000 people were my clan. None of them wanted to pay for what I had to do because they'd always had me for free as part of government funding.
Right.
So that was sort of a real trick for me there. And then I just got this free email saying, come along to an event, rocked up at the good old Ibis Hotel in Fulham, London, West London.
I remember
those
it well.
days?
Of course.
Yeah. And I went with my sister, and we learnt that the King's Road was just round the corner. And what we said we'd do is we'd stay in the Ibis overnight for the weekend, even though we only lived 20 minutes down the road. We were going to make a whole weekend of it, and sisters on the road. And we were going to go on the Friday night, and then if we didn't like it, Saturday we were going to go to the King's Road. And to this day, I have still never been to the King's Road. This event blew my mind. I'd been in education at that point for 10 or 11 years, responsible for inspiring the minds of future generations and future business owners, creating modules. And I had a master's in education as well.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yet I still didn't know the stuff that was being taught by this guy, and how our thoughts control everything. And literally, that was it. It was like someone took the top of my head off, scooped out everything, mixed it with this new knowledge, put it back, and I don't feel like I've stopped since.
Yeah. It was a revolutionary experience for me as well. I think at that time, where I feel that I was very much, what they call in the personal development world, in effect. I was definitely in effect. I was in super victim mode. I was like, the world happens to me. Terrible. Life is bad, and it's there's nothing I can do about it. It was like helplessness and victim mentality. That's definitely where I was, and that, I would say, is around the time where I recognized that, had the awareness, and also started learning the tools to do something about it and get out of that and get to living more at cause and taking responsibility for myself and my life. So that was a huge point of change for me. Were there any particular points of change in that experience? I mean, I guess the journey you had in your career was a big point of change for you that pushed you in a direction to look at new things and think about different things. But in that particular experience of learning this stuff, what were some of the things that maybe stand out for you as like breakthrough moments?
I think there are a couple of things that, and I'm not saying I wasn't in the same position as you, but I wouldn't have described it in the same way you've just described your starting point. But I think what I recognized was that everything I had in my life was a result of the decisions and the actions I'd taken. And anything that was missing in my life was equally a result of the actions or decisions I hadn't taken.
Right.
And so there's no blame. That's the second point. There's just an opportunity to learn. And we also dabbled in hypnosis and became master hypnosis practitioners, etc. And
course.
I remember, that time when I was, people poking me going, stiff and rigid, you're stiff and rigid, and then laying me out, and I was supported by only my head and my heels between two chairs, with this belief that I had this huge and weighty backside that would drag me down. And yet I controlled my mind to say stiff as a board. That, put with the idea that there's no blame, and anything that I want in my life, I just need to make the right decision. And then the knowledge that I can make my body so stiff that I can be suspended between two chairs just made me go, well, whatever I want, I can have now. And then, of course, you've got to put an ethical framework around it, because that could take you down a whole path of, I don't know, unethical values and, being all out for yourself.
And for some people, it does. It definitely.
Oh, definitely. Yes. Yeah. And I think we could probably have an off-screen chat about the paths that other people have taken. And
let's do that, but not in this episode, for sure.
No.
But yeah, definitely. I mean, ethical framework is a big thing for me. I now teach influence and persuasion way beyond what we ever learned in NLP and hypnosis stuff. But I teach it within an ethical framework, because that's the best you can do. It's just tools that can be used. They can be used for positive outcomes and for greater benefit, or they can be used for personal gain, or even for negative consequences. They're just tools, same as a hammer in that sort of sense.
Absolutely.
You and I took things, thankfully, down a more ethical path. And so what did that end up leading you into? Because what you do now in your life is different to what you did then.
Hugely different. Well, do you know what? I think we would be able to find bridges between before and after, because there's still an awful lot of education in my life, not just me doing the education, but me sharing my knowledge and my experience to others. So I think that's acted as a bridge or potentially a foundation that goes from past to future. So I think the next step would be described as one of regaining control. And I said control is a big word for me. It's always been a big thing for me. I poodled along through the teenage years up until I got married completely fine, then found myself in a relationship which, I don't know if it wasn't ethical, but it wasn't mutually beneficial, would be maybe a way to say.
Toxic or destructive.
Very definitely toxic. Yeah, very definitely toxic, but toxic from the point where there was no benefit for me, other than obviously I left with 2 small daughters, which was a huge benefit. But I think the thing is that it was about control. And during that relationship, I lost financial control. And that's me being nice to myself. Quite frankly, I never even attempted to take financial control. And that's one of the things I see a lot of people struggling with now. They're poodling along and they think they've got a big house and they think they've got money in the bank account. Quite often they don't have that much money in the bank account, or they think they've got a good job. And then if we go back to where we were last year, COVID comes along, whacks everybody in the face. And actually they find out that while they thought they were financially secure, they weren't financially resilient. And what I really want to do now is show people what financial resilience means and looks like. Back then, I had no financial security. I had no financial intelligence. I was completely reliant on a partner in a toxic relationship. And so when we came out of the training that we did together, that was the first thing I went for. How can I make myself more financially secure? I was a single parent. I had previously been on benefits before I became a university student and then a university lecturer. And now here I was not really earning money again. And how was I going to turn that round? And that's when I started investing in property, because I saw that property was a tangible asset. Again, here comes that word, that I could control. I could buy it. I could improve its value. I could rent it as one unit. I could rent it as part units. I could sell it. I could do all sorts of things with it. Whereas when you have a share, you buy it, you hold it, you sell it. When you have gold, you buy it, you hold it, you sell it. Even everybody's crazy about Bitcoin. Well, if you're lucky not to get robbed, then you just buy it, hold it, hope that its value increases, but then have to sell it to realize any capital. And what I wanted was to be in a position where I constantly had a monthly income and a reserve. But that monthly income, if I didn't need to spend it, would build up my reserve, so that I had the words we used then were financial security and could choose what I wanted to do with my life.
Which is an important thing. I think it maybe took me a little while longer to recognize that for myself and get my finances straightened out. And I know that learning with Harv Echo, who I still work with to this day, learning money management skills, basic money management skills, was definitely a big turning point in my life, to actually saying, okay, well, I am actually responsible for my finances, and you should know what's in your bank account, not just find out when you're at the checkout that there's not enough money there, kind of thing. And that once I started doing that, actually, I think within 3 months of managing my money and not just spending it on stupid stuff, I got out of my overdraft for the first time in years, and got my account back in the black. And from there, it's like, okay, well, then I started putting savings away, something I hadn't done since I was a kid. And I was like, oh my God, it makes such a difference.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, it's definitely, it's a foundational thing for, I think, for building your life on. Like, if you haven't got your money taken care of, if you don't at least know where you are, I'm not saying you have to be rich, but if you don't at least look after your money and know where you are with it, then you are missing an essential foundational point in life, and you're not going to know what you can do and what you can't do, and it just means you're not really looking after stuff, right? It's self-care.
I'd go even further than that, and I think it probably picks up on that self-care piece that you mentioned at the end. If you don't manage your money, unconsciously you are going to be stressed.
Right.
Because we cannot deny that money rules our society now. You have to have money to eat, you have to have money to live. But if you're not aware of your finances, and by this I mean knowing the exact amount that you need every month in order to pay your basic living costs, that's the key thing, right? You can go on from this afterwards, and I talk to my clients about that, as we get down the line. But the basic costs, so how much is my rent or my mortgage? How much is my food bills, my utility bills, basic travel costs, like if you need to, when you used to leave the house to go to work, and petrol to go to work or train travel to go to work, just those basic costs there, not replacing your clothes, not replacing your car, and we can't really have holidays or anything, but just the basic costs. And then whatever that number is, whether it's £1,000 or £3,000, you are now empowered by the knowledge of that number.
Right.
And then what you can do is you can go, let's just pick 2,000 as a number in between. I need 2,000 every month to pay my basic expenses. My take-home wage is 2,500. Perfect. I earn more than I have to spend. I've got 500 left, and that I can then look at as savings and spending money, saving up for holidays, replacing clothes, doing whatever else I need. What you really need to get yourself to a position is where that gap is bigger, because you need to build up a contingency. That's a bit more complicated. But the point is, once you know that your number is, whatever it is, 2,000, and you know how much money is coming in, you're suddenly in control. You calm the mind, and then an amazing thing happens. Your ability to do everything else is exponential. You just said that, and the expression on your face, you got out of the red and into the black. So not only did you get in control, but you stopped wasting money and giving it to the bankers in terms of interest and penalty payments.
Yeah.
Because of that, you already had more money than you had before. You then started to save, which gives you a sort of a low level of calm and confidence that's going on there. And your whole expression changed. And just that then just frees your mind to really focus on what matters to you. That could be being with your family. It could be growing your business. What comes next almost doesn't matter, because whatever comes next will be better, because you're not worrying about money, even though you don't know that you're worrying about money.
I think that's super important, Vicky, and I agree with you 100%. And I do think a lot of it is the stress. What's one of the number one reasons why couples argue with each other? It's money, more often than anything else. And so even just knowing where you are with it and having agreements in your relationship about how you manage it and what you spend money on and all those things, it makes a huge difference. And I run Harv's financial freedom training program, and one of the things that I think people always find very empowering is getting what Harv calls their freedom number, which is what you've just described, knowing how much your life costs to live. That's your freedom number, like the stuff you have to spend money on every month, food, utilities, rent, mortgage, whatever. That stuff, if you can cover that cost, and often it is around 2,000, sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. If you can actually meet that through investment income, through more residual sources — I hate saying passive income because it never is, but it's the word that I know everyone understands, but I think it's very misleading. And if you can meet that, then you are essentially financially free. Whatever else you earn in a job or anything like that, that's yours. You can invest that, you can play with it, you use it for whatever you want. That is what most people probably don't understand as being financial freedom. You ask most people, what does financially free mean to you? And they'll talk about winning the lottery, or they'll talk about having tens of thousands. It's like, well, that's a huge and maybe big gap between where you are now and where you might want to be, that probably some part of your brain is going, nah, not going to happen, not doable. But to be making 2,000 plus a month and covering your basic life expenses, if that's your initial goal, at least if that's not where you are now, you have a much better chance of hitting that. And then once you get there and your financial stresses are eased, the world is your oyster, as it were.
Oh, I totally agree with you. I mean, you use the word freedom and I use the word enough, because it's quite interesting that the enough word has two different connotations. Not enough. We have it as quite a negative word. But what I really want to show people is that if you have the ability to pay your own way in life, even at the most basic level, to keep a roof over your head, to keep yourself warm, and to keep food in your belly, and for your family, however that family looks, you have enough. There are so many people out there that don't even have that.
Yeah.
So recognize that you have enough. Be grateful that you have that. And I know I've only talked about the basic costs, but you can always have more than enough if you want.
Yeah.
Know that you've got enough, and then work to have more than enough. And if you really want, have much more than enough. I'm not going to stop
Exactly
you,
that.
but know that you have enough, because that just calms the mind and then allows you to just move on and actually set new goals. You know, when you come from a fearful place, I know people who have got a lot of money and they live in fear, and they are just tight.
Yeah.
They are just tight because they don't recognize that these people not only have enough and more than enough, they actually have much more than enough. They are sorted way into their retirement for however long they live, but they don't appreciate the money in that way. But then equally, I was working with a client just the other week, and they've got, you know, a multi-million-pound house. They've got an extremely successful business, but they've only got £5,000 in savings, which doesn't actually cover the cost of 1 month. Their monthly cost for 1 month was £7,000. Now, bear in mind, we're recording this in lockdown. I do not understand how this person is spending £7,000. 2,000 of it's their mortgage. There's £5,000 there going on takeaways and into Mr. Bezos's pocket. You know, Amazon's getting rich off the back of this. You just need to dig into this. But you know what I would then say, and you probably cover this as well, is if you're, and I'm going to be a bit generous here, right? So 2,000's on the mortgage. Let's say another 2,000 on household costs. Let's say you're wasting about 3,000 a month, which is more than some people's living expenses and wages.
Yeah.
What's going wrong in other parts of your life that you could just throw away £3,000 a month on rubbish, and when that £3,000 a month could be coming into your bank account, your savings, you'd have nearly £40,000 easily within the space of a year. You know, it's just so easy to turn this around. And what have you got to show for all of that money? And this sort of mindless consumerism, we are wrapped in it. And I bet everybody, all through the last 12 months, where they're at home, they're feeling unhappy, they're looking at buying things, you know, maybe they've upped their TV subscriptions and they're consuming box sets or more movies. That's okay, because actually it's cheaper to watch a movie off the TV than it was to take the whole family out to the cinema. Yeah. Not least because you're not paying a fortune on popcorn and fizzy drinks. You know,
everything else you have to buy whilst you're there. So some of my screening falling down there. I get exactly what you're saying, and I don't think I really recognized how much I was wasting money on things until I cut back. And I see this because I sometimes get it with private clients who I work with that they want to work on their financial security and things like that. And I do that to a degree. I mean, it's not really an area of specialization for me. I can work with people on the foundational stuff, but, you know, you take people further than that. And that's why I often will recommend clients to come and speak to you. And but in doing that, some people don't want to do one of the most simple things, not just managing your money, but also simplifying your spending. And that means essentially cutting back, living a bit more simply. People don't want to do it. And I know for me, that was one of the things that made the biggest difference in terms of being able to get out of debt quickly and stop spending money on stupid stuff, was actually just turning things around and saying, okay, I can tighten my belt for a while. And it was tough. I think I spent probably a year of really had a very small personal entertainment and going out sort of budget, and lived a bit sort of more simply than perhaps I needed to. But in the end, it came down to one thing. It was like, well, do you want the comfort and the nice things right now, or do you want an even better life in the future? Because if you are not willing to think long term, take a look at the big picture, you are going to be stuck in this cycle for however long.
I think there are two types of situations here. The first one is, as you described, back in the early days where you were in debt. And if you're in debt, then there needs to be drastic measures. Yeah. You know, I suppose I can be a little a little hard, a little tough with my clients. But if you're in debt, that's it. There's no question. You have to tackle that debt. You cannot sustain this. This is like cutting open one of your veins and letting the blood drip out. You are going to die eventually, in a financial sense, if you carry on down that path. So drastic measures. And yes, that does mean a contraction of your lifestyle. But for a lot of the clients I work with, they've actually got a lot of money. And although I gave that example of one that didn't have enough money to cover their savings, most of my clients have got lots of money. They've got money in equity in their houses. They've got investments. They've got lots of money in savings. But what they're not doing is on a monthly basis managing how they spend and use that money to further their goals. As you say, they all want this great life. They've actually got practically this great life, but they're in a cycle where through overspending on nonsense, that's a very judgmental, but it is nonsense, they're missing the opportunity to bring what they really want forward by years that they can have this. So they're caught in this cycle where they go out to work, they go out to work, they go out to work. They're missing their family. They're missing family time. Obviously, more of this example is before we weren't allowed out the house to go to work. But, you know, they were going out, and even now they're locked in a bedroom somewhere and they're working and they're missing their family, trying to bring money into the house. But they've missed the fact that there's a big hole over in the corner and the money's all pouring out. You know, whether it's going to Amazon or whether it's going on takeaways or whatever they're doing, they're using money to buy things or food to make them happy because they're not happy, because they're not together living the life that they want. So we've had this situation where we can go out for walks. But if you're stuck still having to earn money to pay for a lifestyle that isn't making you happy, so you're locked in your back bedroom or wherever it is, lots of people seem to have moved to the attic. Even I think BT, when they advertise about their Wi-Fi in the UK, are talking about how if you can't, what's the point of putting your home office in the attic when the Wi-Fi won't reach? You know, everybody's done it. They've all moved to corners of the houses so they can get peace and quiet to work. You're not there for your children, helping them with the school, or all the pressure is fallen on one parent to provide for the children for their schooling. And one parent is slaving away, trying desperately to earn more and more money because they're not financially secure in the first place, because they don't know their financial position. They're buying things that really aren't making them happy in the long run, because what they really want to be able to do is go out every afternoon, go for a walk with the children in the park, or walk the dog, or maybe they want to be able to exercise, and they can't because they have to earn money to pay for the stuff that they don't really want, but it's making them pseudo happy while they can't have the things they really want.
I think maybe this last 12 months or so has been an opportunity for a lot of people to experience a bit of a wake up and sort of a pattern interrupt, if you like, that says, I don't really want that anymore. I want something different. And maybe now's the time to start doing something about it. Others are in a position where they have no option but to do something to turn things around, because they've either lost work or business employment through COVID and the likes, and through the dip in the economies. And they have no choice but to reassess it and try and find new ways forward. When you were starting out, you said that you weren't in such a great financial position. How did you then actually get started with the investment?
So my sister and I accidentally went along to a financial planning session, and she was sort of interested in pensions at the time, and I just went along for the company. And we met a guy there, and he was talking about investing in property and how you could invest in property for a pension, and that was the way the conversation worked. We started speaking to him. He talked about property, and I'd always had this thought that property was a good idea. But when my sister and I spoke, we had very different approaches. So she wanted to buy somewhere nice, do it up designer, and let it out corporate. And I just wanted something that made sense mathematically. I didn't care what it looked like because I was never going to live in it. I just wanted it to be mathematical sense. Now, when I say I don't care what it looks like, I wasn't going to be affected by its appearance because I saw it as a business transaction. So we just couldn't do it on our own. Then we met this guy and he explained the model, and we literally the very first time went to our parents, and our parents had a mortgage-free house, as many parents do. And we said to my mum and dad, we'd like to borrow some money, and they lent us initially £40,000, and that was enough for us to buy our first property. And then, as a couple of years went later, I remortgaged that property where we'd got equity in it. Now, I don't think that's a good idea as a long-term strategy at all, but we can talk about that later. But I did pull it out in this particular case because where I bought the first property in 2004, effectively with my parents' money. It had increased in value because I was at the right point accidentally in the market, and it had climbed dramatically from 2004 to 2007. And by the time we got to 2007, I was quite switched on. I'd already been doing a little bit of this training, and I was aware of the fact that, money was a tool. And so I started to watch the markets. I didn't really understand everything that was going on economically, but mathematically, I could see that this couldn't continue. House prices couldn't continue to rise if people's wages didn't. Little did I know that actually it would be the whole Lehman Brothers in the States that was going to bring us down. But as soon as I started to see what was going on in America, I know that it ripples over to Europe later.
Yeah.
And so quickly remortgaged our property, bought ourselves a second one. I then went on and remortgaged our own personal home and pulled some money out so that Bob and I could buy a property. So now all of a sudden, 2007, we've got 3 London properties, which was incredible. It was actually that was enough money, really. That was it. We were fine. Yeah. But then I got the bug. I'd finished my training. I then went on a proper property training course, got totally sucked in by paying tens of thousands of pounds for training that we didn't need. But, wow. Sometimes you can say I wouldn't be where I am now if I hadn't done what I did, and that's fine. Yeah. But then we went back to my parents with a business plan, pulled more money out of our own family home, and just went for it and bought the portfolio. But all the time, it was built on a foundation of clearly knowing what our personal finances were. Strategically, I did the work, and Bob, for example, had to stay in a job so that we were mortgageable. So there was always strategies going on around the money, how to make the best use of our time, how to make the best use of our money, which was the best property to buy, what were the results that it was going to lead to. So it was all a mathematical equation. And I just reveled in that, quite frankly.
It's is there still, and think about people who may be coming into the property market now, is there still a way in for younger people who maybe aren't on great incomes and maybe still sorting out their financial lives and things like that? And is it just unassailable now, or is there still a way forward?
I think first I need to ask you back a question. Are you talking about, is there a way for young people to get onto the property market as residential buyers or as investors?
That's a good point. It is different. So for people who are maybe looking to start investing in property, is there a way forward?
Yes. Right. And I think what they need to do is the fundamentals, much like you described for yourself. There is no point, and I'll be blunt here, there's no point thinking that you can invest in property if you are in debt yourself. Yeah. That doesn't mean to say that you couldn't start a property business. There's many roles that you can play in property, from sourcing properties to learning a trade and working on the properties, and they would all form apprenticeships for you. So if you're currently in a less than perfect, no, not imperfect, it doesn't even have to be perfect, but a less than break-even point in your finances, if you're in debt, then you won't be able to get a mortgage. So you can't buy an investment property or a residential property for yourself. And depending on the damage that you've done to your credit report, it may take you a number of years to improve that. That doesn't mean to say that you can't upskill your knowledge. You can learn about property investing. You can do all the things that I did in the early days, understand what areas are good, understand where the market's going, which has shifted dramatically, and I think will continue to shift dramatically with the effect of COVID. You know, people not wanting to live in flats so much, people valuing outdoor space. I think that will have a knock-on effect, and should have a knock-on effect in developments. I think they'll just carry on doing their own thing. But really, if you want to create, I don't know, beautiful living spaces for people to be happy in, then you need to look at how you can do that. And you can learn so much. You could go, first of all, on the physical trades. You could get yourself a qualification around the hardcore skills of, you know, brickying, laying, decorating, all of that sort of stuff. Or you could go into the softer skills of looking at how you can do certificates for things that need to go on. You could train in terms of the finances. So this is a great time for you to control your finances and learn more.
Yeah.
But if you're at the other side of things and you're actually in a good financial position and you have savings behind you, then you can start to have these conversations in your family, test them out. And this is a good time. In fact, every time is a good time to invest in property. You just need to know where in the cycle you are. So if the prices are currently high and the market's hot, then you possibly don't want to be leaping in there and buying things at asking price. But you can still watch in your local area. There's always the house. We've literally had it down our road. A house, you know, 4 doors away, has been empty for a long while, came on the market, snapped up, because it needs a lot of work doing to it. And there's a very specific type of investor that will go for those properties. Again, where my daughter lives, 6 doors down the road, the old lady has either gone into a care home or passed on. The house has lain empty. We were watching it on the market, snapped up, gone. Well, if you can start to be aware of that in your local area, you can start to prepare yourself. So you could buy a property like that with your family, maybe with friends, very carefully. And if you get yourself in a good position, there's no reason why you can't get yourself a joint venture partner. But that's advanced skills, I would say.
Sure. Yeah, I think this is important stuff, and you know, it does very much seem. I know people are always talking about they sort of make money from property and all this kind of stuff, and like the reality is, to do it and to do it well, it takes time and it takes a lot of effort and input, and so you need to probably know that you want to do it, and it helps if you have an interest in it. Like you said, you had you even found a bit of a bug for it once you got started. But if you can get started and get some good solid advice, and I think if anyone's maybe telling you that it's super easy and you can have it like in a month or be something like that, then they're probably they're blowing smoke. But
well, actually what they're doing is their strategy for getting rich from property is getting money out of people who want to get rich from property. So there's a whole industry around that. How do I get rich from property? I will tell you how to get rich from property, and I won't be doing any of it myself. Sure. And there are some sad stories about people who put a lot of money into training in the hope of getting rich quick, and then the realization has hit them. So, you know,
unfortunately, I've worked with some people who've had those experiences. So, I mean, I don't want to get into sort of name and shame and stuff like that. I mean, we have some idea who they are, and we can maybe chat privately about some of that. But when it comes to finding somebody to work with, what should somebody look for in who they go to for property advice, and maybe even paying to learn and work with?
I think you have to do your due diligence. You have to do your research on people. You want to check them out online to see what people are saying about them. And don't fall for the whole, I don't know, 5-star ratings on everything and everything is hunky-dory. You want to see that there is some negative feedback, because if that's there, then at least it's genuine. You know, I don't know, when you if you go online and you want to buy something from Mr. Bezos, you look at not just the 5-star ratings to see what people say is good about something, but I go to the 1 and the 2-star ratings. I want to find what people think are wrong with the product and then make a judgment call from that. And I think you need to do that. And don't rush, you know. I'm not saying prevaricate for like 14 years, but I'm saying don't jump at the first thing you see. Check people out. Have conversations with people. And I think the key thing is, when you're buying into something, are you going to get to work with the person who is selling it to you? Because quite often you've got the big guys doing all the big guns. Look at all the cars, look at all of this, look at everything I've got. Come on my course. But actually, the truth of the matter is, You work with people that learnt from people that learnt from that learnt from people that learnt from them.
Right.
So you're getting like third-hand education. Yes, I'm sure there's some degree of quality control there, so I'm not knocking them, but does it matter to you if you're sold something by this person that at the end of it you're not going to be trained by that person? And that for me matters. You know, if I'm coming to you, Johnny, because you're telling me that you're great at helping me with my finances, I've had the whole conversation with you. Now, whether that's a real conversation, I actually get to speak to you, or I watch your videos and I read your materials, however I have, in a sense, had a communication with you, I then want you to deliver on the words that you have told me that you can deliver on. I don't want you to pass me down to Jemima, who's going to teach me, you know? So that matters to me. It might not matter to other people, but I want to know that, and you've told this story, haven't you? You weren't in a good place financially. You turned yourself round. Not only did you turn yourself round, you now work in the industry helping other people turn themselves round. That to me talks about a story.
Yeah.
I was in social housing as a benefit tenant on benefits, living in rented accommodation given to me by a landlord. I clocked what he was doing. I learnt about it. I did it for myself. I now do it for other people. And you would work directly with me and not showing up once a month at a preordained order of learning. But what do you need to know today to move you forward? And I will adapt what I teach you to make sure that you get the right information at the right time. Now, if that matters to you, that's what you need to search for.
Yeah. In my experience tends to be that the further people get into things like, I think at first a lot of the sort of events industry, whether we're talking about investment events, financial events, kind of personal, professional development kind of things, it can be very dazzling and looks really impressive, especially if you've not been involved in it before. As I seem really professional, they kind of know what they're doing. It's very easy to get swept along by stuff, and they will work with that and turn up the emotion in the room in many of these events to get the sale, to get you to buy whatever it is they're offering, and get you into their funnels and get you spending more and more money. And so generally, in my experience, the more people get into these sorts of things and understand what's going on in the industry, either they get really turned off by it and think, no, that's all rubbish and horrible, I hate all of it, or they start moving more to I'd rather work more personally with people who I can actually get to know and feel that relationship with and trust. And I think we are at a point, which I think I've talked about before on various shows, but we're at a point where I think with quarantines and lockdowns and COVID and everything like that, that we have been accelerated into what was already happening, which was more of a deeper relationship kind of marketing and connection in sales, that more and more people want that. They want to feel like they have some connection with the people who they buy for, and they're looking for the authenticity. They're looking for that. Want to feel that this is a real person and not just some rags to riches story that's sort of tugging at my heartstrings and then going to get me pumped up to just make a sale. People are recognizing more and more what's authentic, what's real, and there are a lot of people out there now exposing the scammers and exposing what people aren't doing. Thankfully,
and I think there have been really for the last decade. It's just you didn't know where they were, and maybe people were cautious, and you had to be in the right forum to hear all of the stories. I think there are a couple of things here for me, which is about the authenticity. If you participate in anything that you have paid for that then requires you to buy something more, so they own it, which is a classic thing, isn't it? I'm going to charge you £100 and then I'm going to give you one thing, but in order to get the 9 you've got to pay £1,000, and then when you pay the £1,000 you don't get the other 9, you get another 5, and then you have to pay 3,000 or 10,000 to get the other bits. As soon as you start to see yourself in that cycle, you need to walk away, because you are constantly going to be, as you mentioned it, you are in a funnel, and they are going to milk it all the way through. Absolutely. I think the other thing to look at is what we used to have in the old days was the whole run to the back of the room, as you say. The person at the front G's everybody up, they all get super excited, and then there's only 3 or 10 or 20 run to the back of the room, and then one person runs, and then everybody runs, and they're all clamoring with a piece of, here, take my money, take my money. They do that to you online as well.
Yeah.
So while you can't run anywhere when you're online, they are driving you quickly. When you feel that, step away. There's always honestly, there is always another opportunity. So if you really wanted to work with Johnny and he was saying that there's only 10 opportunities this month, the fact that there's only 10 opportunities this month or this quarter means that there will be another 10 down the line, because it's Johnny's business and he's going to have to make another 10 people come in. In fact, I shouldn't use you as an example. Fred's business.
I don't do that. I don't do the fake scarcity stuff.
No, absolutely. So I didn't mean to say, but
no,
Fred,
I know that.
Fred had you with, there are only 10 opportunities to work with me, I guarantee you he does that every month or every quarter, because there's no way that just once in his life 10 people can pay him even £1,000 and him have enough money to carry on. So think about their business model. And if their business model is trying to force you to buy something in a heightened emotional state, which is exactly what auction companies do, take a breath and walk away.
Yeah, exactly. Good advice, Vicky. So want to start pulling things to a close, but I know that people are going to want to find out more about you, and so they should. There's a reason why I recommend you to my clients. How can people find out more about you and what you do, and maybe some of your books as well?
Yes. Well, I think the easy thing is to start with the books. If you like to read, you can just buy books at ridiculous prices if you buy them on Kindles. Most of the books are between £1.99 and £3.99, and and you can just see them above my head. We're going that way. There are 4 property books and then 1 story, but don't worry about that one. You can check out my website, you can check out social media, but I think, if you really want to move forward, both in terms of financially sorting yourself out, making the most of your finances, I typically work with clients who are senior executives or business owners who've got in the region of £250,000 in either assets or cash, but they're not happy with the way life is turning out at the moment because they're just working all the time. And actually what they really want to be doing is something else. Then I can work with you. Get in touch. Find me on social media or send me an email at Vicky, and you can see how my name is spelt here, Vicky at wusche-associates.co.uk. And I'll gladly have a call with you and explain in more detail, maybe even highlight where you are now, but explain in more detail how we can work together with sort of personal, strategic, financial planning. This is not financial planning like the financial planners do it. This just takes it to a whole nother level. This isn't about trying to force you to buy stocks and shares or even property. It's about becoming aware of where you're at and what it means for you as a family to be resilient. So no matter what happens down the line, no matter what the Chancellor says in any of the countries that you're in, no matter what the government plans, you are okay.
See, this is one of the things I love about recommending people to you is that people can check out your books and they can decide whether they like your style and your approach to things before they've even met you, before they even speak to you and something. Oh yeah, this is someone who knows what they're talking about and who I want to speak to. Or it's like, maybe it's not for me. That's up to you. But you can check Vicky out without going to some big rah-rah event and having go and get you all pumped up, come and buy my stuff. It's like, it's a much gentler way of doing it, but it's nice and authentic as well. I love it. Vicky,
I talk about that as being stalkers, Johnny. So you can stalk me. You can stalk me through the books and YouTube and all social media. And then when you're ready, you can come forward knowing what you're getting into. But thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for coming and joining us today and sharing some really great insights and your story as well. It's nice, some personal stuff as well, which I really appreciate. It's always a pleasure to speak with you, and definitely we'll stay connected, and I'm going to keep sending people your way. Vicki Wusche, thank you so much.
Thank you, John.